The manufacturing edge, where ops leaders break barriers, drive growth, and redefine what's possible. Part 4 of the Back to Basics series focuses on leadership in the workforce, highlighting that strong results in retention come from developing frontline leaders who coach, build trust, and drive accountability and daily discipline on the shop floor.
Let's just switch and pick up another theme, go back to leadership and availability of manpower or labor and skill sets that we have out in the workforce available. If you think about what it takes, where are the gaps in talent, both in leadership and in the workforce that we see that are presenting barriers that need to overcome? Alberto, let's start with you and think about what are you seeing in Mexico that are some of the key gaps in either leadership or the workforce?
I think leaders need to think about on how to structure knowledge transfer. I think this is still a skill, how to train the people who are under their command. Because in Mexico and in the region, still like the master apprentice model, supported by a short and practical training, on-the-job training. I think they're still effective because they don't receive formal training. So they rely more on previous old man experience rather than probably on human resources training. I think that's still a challenge, still working. So, but also listening to my answer, I think also human resources department still a pending agenda to enable growth so they can prepare the next generation of leaders.
But what do you see in the workforce? Do you see turnover issues? Is the turnover high in Mexico?
Yes, we have high turnovers in the majority of the plants, exceeding the traditional or the expected numbers. So, and in some regions, they're happening faster than others. So they need to do something to retain the people. And it's about the supervisor, the boss, who will be the responsible, who will be making the magic to retain and to stop that turnover.
But where does that magic start? What's an element of that?
I think it's being at the shop floor, being with them, asking questions, taking care of their people, taking care of their thoughts, taking care about how are we doing? What do you think we can do better? How are you feeling? What do you need to do your work better? So I think that those basic standard questions will generate confidence and loyalty, not only to the supervisor, but for the company itself.
You know, I think it kind of goes to the old cliche of, you know, what if I train the people and they leave? What happens if I don't and they stay? You know,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think that is,
Exactly.
you know, turnover is an issue in the U.S. as well. But, you know, a way of combating that is providing training. There's nothing more frustrating for an operator to know there's issues and not be able to know how to deal with those. And I see that very, very often. And it goes into leadership as well. Another thing that I think is very common here in the U.S. is at all levels of leadership, operations leadership. You know, I was the best operator, so I got made the supervisor. Nobody told me how to be a supervisor.
Exactly.
I survived and I did okay, so I got made a department manager. And then I got made a plant manager, but nobody's told me how to perform those roles. I've figured it out. I've survived, but I don't have the right skills to be able to do that. And so training, be it in terms of process training for operators and, you know, people in the process, and also for leaders, I think is very important. You know, a lot of places I go, the line leads, the supervisors, the department managers, production managers, were just really good operators. They know the process very well, but they don't know how to do what they need to do in terms of filling their role.
David, to add to that, I fully agree with that. I mean, we see this across Europe as well. You know, people are promoted and then actually come to the point, oh, there's different skills needed. I mean, this is what we see in the projects that we're engaging with our clients. I already mentioned earlier the topic of active supervision, which means a leader, a shift supervisor, or actually a plant manager, all the different levels that have groups of people reporting to them, improving their, call it management skills, and making sure that they are more focusing on active supervision instead of admin and preparing plans in the office. We're talking about the office in the middle of the factory already. This is a big role for us as well, that we help So beyond the training, there's a lot of coaching needed because this is on-the-job feedback. Oh, see what you're doing here. See what you just explained to somebody to do something differently. Did they get it? And then the next time you're observing that situation on the floor, are you pinpointing to it? And that is active supervision that drives behavioral change in the organization. And behavioral change is the one that drives change, that drives results.
I agree, because in Latin America, we are still promoting technical experts into leadership roles without training them to lead people. So we also need to be aware that some of them don't like the new role, even though their technical expertise says that they are ready. Become a leader and become a boss is kind of a different thing. So we need to prepare not only people who will be taking care or will be responsible for people, but also train them to be a better leader.
You know, this theme, especially in frontline leadership, whether it's a supervisor or lead, whatever the company thinks about it, whoever that individual is, who's that first point of contact with the team in a leadership role. You know, I'm not sure, when I think back over my entire career, if this issue has ever been different. I think it's something that's been going on since I entered the workforce only a couple of years ago.
A couple.
We tend to think of onboarding as only a process for new employees coming into the business. We don't tend to think of onboarding as when I'm shifting the role from someone, when I'm changing their role and they're moving somewhere else in the organization. What's the proper onboarding and way to bring them into the new role? And I think there's probably something to be examined by organizations of more robustness when I'm putting someone in a role, whether it's a promotion or just a lateral move of, okay, now I'm going to ask you to do something different. How well do I onboard you into that role? You know, you don't need the onboarding for the company if you've already been there, but you do need to know what that role is. So what reaction to that and thoughts?
I think even when training gets pretty, as we were talking about implementing automation or technology, you know, even when training around those kind of things get done, it's the technical training only. And what gets missed is the behavioral component of, because of this technology or because of this new product or because you're in a new role, there's some behavioral changes that you need to understand, embrace, and enact. And that gets completely missed. And I think, you know, that's problems or opportunities. It's a big problem today, but it's also a big opportunity for manufacturers.
Yeah.
I think manufacturing still treats onboarding as kind of orientation, but not a capability building process. I think those new hirees must understand also standards, escalation paths, and expectations, but also leadership roles. So I think there's a pending agenda.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Alberto, I think that's a great thought. And what we also see in many places is, as we're drawing deeper into the workforce, we're not necessarily drawing on people that have worked in a manufacturing environment before, and the pace and or the physical requirements and even the concentration requirements of working in a manufacturing environment. And we don't take that into account. So there almost needs to be, in part of that onboarding and not orientation, but bringing them up to speed emotionally and physically for the job, and so that they can work at the pace that we need them to work at, and not expecting them to be there day one, right? In literally every, you know, well, we tend to like sports analogies, but pick your sport. Everyone has preseason training. Everyone has conditioning to get ready for the sport. And yet we don't think about that with manufacturing. We just expect them to walk in and come up to speed and be equal to the person that's next to them that's been doing it for, 10 or 20 years.
Immediately.
Yeah. And we know that's just not realistic, right? And to David, it kind of comes back to a point you made earlier. That's an investment in people. And we can be reluctant to do that at times. We think, well, but what if they leave? Well, if you don't make that investment, with most certainty, you're going to have them leave more than you want. And it's going to cause you problems, right? We underestimate the cause or the impact of turnover and losing people.
Tune in to part 5 of the series, Why Doing Nothing is the Riskiest Strategy.